All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Tuesday, September 3rd, and the Longhorns are in paradise, as am I. A little vacation, but also this isn't work. So, I'm not working on the day off. But I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson. This is brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. This is All in Horns, Horns Daily. The Longhorns are 1-0 to start their football season, and so are the women's volleyball team, also starting their season off 1-0 in a huge win over number 3 Wisconsin. They won 3-1. Jake, I know you watched that game. How'd they look?
Well, I was able to catch only the first 2 sets. Unfortunately, I was seeing some family on the road, but I was able to catch the first 2 sets, which were the 2 closest sets of the game. Very close. 30-28 was the first set. Went into some extras there, and Texas was able to pull that out. They were able to fight off, I believe it was 3 set points to get to the extra play. And then they won the second set 25-23, and then they blew them out in sets 3 and or they lost the second set 25-23, I should say. And then they won sets 3 and 4 dominantly. 25-15 and 25-11 to close it out. What a performance by the back-to-back national champs.
Yeah,
that environment was electric. I wish I could have watched the whole thing, especially considering how dominantly they closed it out. But that is a heck of a way to start the season for the Lady Horns.
It really is. And Jake, I know you mentioned the sets, but Jenna Wyness, she had a great game, 18 kills. Emma Halter with 28 digs. And then also Madison Skinner just adding to that without even really having to contribute with stats necessarily. It's not a stat stuffing type of performance for Skinner. However, just her presence there on that front line, it can't go unnoticed, the impact that she has, even if she's not stuffing the stat sheet.
Yeah, no, she was talked about heavily on the broadcast, as she deserves. She's a player that, could be in contention to win player of the year for sure this year at a national level. And this Longhorn volleyball team certainly looked the part of a team that is going to be adding to the first SEC championships that the Longhorn athletic department will be looking to get this year.
I mean, they kind of, and I know it's early in the season, looked pretty dominant. From my understanding, I was on the road, I was traveling, and so I was on a plane, but I wasn't able to really tune in and watch. But man, from all things that I've heard and all highlights that I've watched, they looked fully in control of that game, even in the set that they dropped.
Yep. No, and we'll continue to learn more about them when they take on Minnesota. I believe that's on the road as well, at Minnesota later on in the evening. But great start for the Lady Horns, and certainly looking like they're looking to try to make it 3 straight, which would be definitely the first time in program history for that, and would be a great way to start out the athletic season.
Something fun to mention as well, Madison Skinner, the first volleyball player to receive just incredible amounts of NIL deals, and her getting on national recognition for her play. So it's going to be a fun team. Definitely something that if you can schedule around football season and get your head around volleyball, tune into those Lady Horns. They are extremely fun to watch. Jake, last week we were so caught up in week 1 and the Colorado State game, and we had just couldn't fit in our schedule. It wasn't that we weren't aware of the news, but Texas recruiting 3 5-stars in the month of August, capping that off with a 5-star wide receiver from Jacksonville, Florida at Mandarin High School, Jamie French. And Jake, just Sark continues to bring in major talent at that wide receiver position.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a receiver and you watch his offense, why wouldn't you want to play? He obviously, I know this wasn't at Texas. Some other fan bases get sensitive if you mention any accomplishments from prior coaching positions, but look at what Devontae Smith did at Alabama, winning a Heisman, which is very rare for a non-quarterback to win a Heisman. And that was in Sarkisian's offense. He was the play caller there. And then at Texas, just last year, Xavier Worthy taken in the first round. Probably should have gone higher, to be honest. Letting him go to the Chiefs was a crime by the NFL, by a lot of receiver needy teams early on that passed on him. I think are going to regret that. And then
Yeah, he's
Adonai
currently
Mitchell
sitting
also
third on
looking
the Chiefs
great.
depth chart, but he'll be number one, I think, by the season's end.
Yes, and then Adonai Mitchell's looking great as well with the Indianapolis Colts. Look for him to have a big first year. So if you're watching off, and then Jordan Whittington, the talk of the Rams, almost their prized rookie. If you look at their social media accounts, if you look at the national recognition he's getting, and he's a guy that didn't fill up the stat sheet as Texas, but I think all of us Longhorns fans know how valuable he was, and he could have filled up the stat sheet if they just weren't so loaded at that wide receiver position.
Well, that and Jordan Whittington didn't even take a snap in the third preseason game for the Rams. So, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know and the value that they put on a guy like Jordan Whittington. Jake, we've seen not only the transfers come in, and we've talked about them at length on this show. And the performance that they had in week one didn't disappoint whatsoever, I don't think. But now you're also just getting recruits like a Ryan Wingo, like a Jonte Cook consistently coming in. And now you've got Jamie French and Khalil Lockett as well. Jake, week one of Texas high school football and football across the country took place. Let's look at those five-star recruits in the month of August and what they did in their week one performances. Let's start off with Jonah Williams and just an all-around athlete and a stat-stuffing performance in week one.
Yeah, Jonah Williams had a week one stat sheet that almost looks fake. He had 2 receiving touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, a kickoff return for a touchdown, which was the opening kickoff of the season, by the way. He also blocked an extra point attempt, had 6 tackles, 2 pass breakups. In a 56-26 win over Manville. He literally filled the stat sheet in all 3 phases.
Yeah, and just absolutely. I mean, you score a touchdown almost on every single side of the ball. He didn't get a defensive touchdown, but the guy is a monster. He's everywhere, and he's a hell of an athlete. And what's going to be really fun to see Sark bring him into the system. Does he? I mean, he's going to get special teams look early as a freshman, obviously, but not only the ability to return kicks and stuff, but do we get to see him? I know the wide receiver depth chart is pretty heavy at Texas, but do we get to even maybe see him in some sort of athletic package, whether he's lined up in the backfield or in a slot or whatever at some point in his collegiate career on offense for Texas?
I think it's possible, but I would also temper that with why do it if you don't need to? If he's very valuable at the safety position, which is such a premier position on the defense, almost why risk it? You know, this is something where 3 years ago I would have said, "Oh, absolutely." But this is how spoiled we are in the Sark era right now with depth. I mean, the receiver position is just completely stacked with talent for the next 4+ years with all these commits not only coming in, but who's on the roster right now that won't be going pro after the season.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And it's not like Texas is depleted of talent like maybe a Colorado is, where they're maybe forced to use a Travis Hunter more so than they probably would even like to. Now, yes, is he electric and exciting and fun to watch? Yeah, he is. But should he be playing both sides of the ball? I mean, for Colorado, yes, but at Texas, he wouldn't have to.
And how about the just real quick on Travis Hunter? He played all but 1 snap of that first game.
Ooh,
That is, I don't know. I almost have an issue with that. I just think that's too much usage of just one player.
well, he got
And
hurt last
before he's
season.
even pro.
He got hurt last season. You know, it's wear and tear on your body, and NFL scouts are gonna look at that. They're gonna be concerned if any kind of medicals pop up during the draft process with the Travis Hunter. You know, as much of a great athlete, as fun as he is to watch, it's going to affect him in the future. And I think if Dion has, I know we're getting a little off topic here, we're going a little off the rails, but I think if Dion has any type of kind of wherewithal in terms of his future as an NFL prospect, he might want to temper the snaps just a little bit. But having to play that much and needing him that much against a team like North Dakota State for week one, that's a lot of red flags for the Colorado Buffaloes.
Shows you the difference between a program like that and a program like Texas with where they're at currently.
100%. Khalid Lockett, Jake, he had a heck of a performance as well. 5-star wide receiver. He had 8 catches, 146 yards, a touchdown, and then he had just an absolute gem of a play with a one-handed 60-yard touchdown grab.
Yeah, he was electric, showing every bit of that 5-star status that he has. He's quick. He's got a lot of length. He's going to be kind of a combination of what Sark likes with speed, but maybe not quite as fast. But I would say he's a little bit more versatile as a pass catcher. That'd probably be the one knock on this receiver group this year is Isaiah Bond's probably your best at making a spectacular type catch, or maybe even Wingo as a true freshman. But I'd say they're not as versatile in it, more just being heavy on the speed side with the current group. So I like what Khalid Lockett's going to bring in coming to the Longhorns next season.
And Jamie French, 2 games through his high school senior year, 7 catches, 206 yards. He does have a touchdown added onto that. He's averaging about 30 yards per catch, which is just maybe get him the ball a little bit more than 7 catches in 2 games, but they probably also don't need him out there that often because they're probably just blowing teams out there in Jacksonville. So we are a little bit more connected with Texas high school sports. It's going to be harder to keep up with the Jamie French. However, we're going to give you an update on a lot of the recruiting as the season goes on, especially big-time performances from some of the higher touted athletes that Texas has coming in. Jake, let's go ahead, kind of flip the subject just a bit. College football breakout performers in week 1. There were a couple of big time performances individually during week 1 that we didn't even get to really touch on in our reaction show to the Texas-Colorado State game. And a couple of just individual performers that jumped out to me was Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty, 20 carries, 267 yards, and 6 touchdowns against Georgia Southern. And they allowed 45 points. They won 56-45 against Georgia Southern, and you needed a performance like that to lift you over. Boise State might have a long season ahead of them, but, man, with a running back like Ashton Jeanty, very, very fun. And then also the Arizona T-Mac wide receiver, 10 catches, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns. T-Mac had more yards combined than Texas A&M and Clemson's offenses put together in week 1. That's not a shot at A&M or anything. That's just fact. That's just a stat for you to take wherever you need to. The Arizona wide receiver had more yards receiving than Clemson, who refuses to take any transfers, scored 3 points, the lowest amount in Dabo Swinney's collegiate career as a high school or a head football coach for Clemson. And then Coach Elko there in College Station had a rough offensive performance as well with Colin Klein's offense at A&M against Notre Dame. But yeah, those were just some notable performances. Jake, anything else jump out to you?
Just what jumped out to me was, and unfortunately there's some lopsided matchups, but how many points some of these teams are scoring now. You had Alabama getting well over 70, Ole Miss getting over 70. So not maybe individual performers, but just team points output almost, because that you normally even 3-4 years ago in college football, I don't think you would have seen this many teams scoring 70, 80 plus points in a game. I mean, Tennessee was on pace to get over 1,000 yards of offense early on in the second quarter. I think they ended up with almost 800, and that's just kind of crazy no matter who you're playing against.
You're looking at teams and individual players putting up stats that should be 2 to 3 games into the season in one single game.
Yeah.
I just think that's absurd, but that's where we are in college football. I mean, we're seeing some big time numbers and everyone's saying they're video game numbers. I can't even do that on the video game, dude. I'm not even good enough at the game to be able to do that, especially on Heisman mode. Jake, let's go ahead. Let's do a fun little segment. We might not do this every week, but we might do our college football predictions based on week 1, our college football predictions based on week 6, our college football predictions based on week 10 before going into, and we'll do it periodically. We'll throw in a prediction round to just kind of see what the difference looks like as the season goes on. But based on week 1, we're going to overreact just a bit. And we are going to say what our college football playoffs look like after 1 week of play. Jake, let's go ahead. Start off with our top 4 seeds. You can give your top 4. I'll give my top 4, which would basically be the conference winners.
Yeah, I have Georgia winning the SEC until proven otherwise. That's who I'm going to pick, even though Alabama did win it last year. But I think Georgia's still just a little bit more proven. Miami, probably the biggest week 1 winner, if you will. I know Florida's not projected to be great this year, but this Miami team looks a little bit different than these last couple of years. Almost reminds me of how Texas last year, a team you'd been waiting to get back for a long time, breaking out in that week 1. Ohio State, I have winning the Big Ten. Looked a little shaky early on, but ended up very much coming alive. Jeremiah Smith having a great game as a true freshman, one of those individual breakouts of week 1. And then I have Utah winning the Big 12. As long as Cam Rising stays healthy, I think they are the best team in the Big 12.
Yeah, and Jake, ours are very similar. I'm going to go ahead and repeat everything you just said, except for the Big 12 winner. I've got Arizona. I don't know about their defense. I don't think they're going to need a defense this year, quite frankly. I think their offense is going to roll, but I do have Arizona. I was very impressed, and maybe it's a T-Mac bias. Maybe I'm just like falling in love with that one performer, and that's okay. That's what this segment's all about. But yeah, I think I'm going to go Georgia, Miami as the 2 seed, Ohio State as the 3 seed, and then I'll slip Arizona in there as the Big 12 winner as my 4 seed. Jake, who else do you have kind of rounding in the next 4 spots?
Yeah, the next 4 spots, and this isn't necessarily perfectly in order. I haven't thought it out that far. There's only been 1 week. You have, some teams playing against good teams, some teams playing against
and
bad teams.
I do know that there's a certain way that they will rank these teams in terms of where they stand. It's not just going to be 5 through 12 are the next best teams in the country. There's a criteria in the order in which they will rank them. So it's not just going to be like 5 through 8 all SEC teams. I don't know how that looks or what that looks like. I haven't dove deep enough into it or been familiar enough with it. Hand up on that one. But anyway, as just play along with us for this segment. Don't get too specific with it.
It's week 1. It's week 1 playoff predictions.
Yeah, we're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah. I will say as of right now, I would expect this team to actually be the 5 seed, would be Notre Dame. They're definitely one of the big week 1 winners, going on the road and winning in a big time environment while missing some key pieces to that offensive line.
I wanted to quickly, before you get into your other teams, that Notre Dame Texas A&M game, was it Notre Dame? I don't think either team looked great. I'll be honest with you. Was it just a matter of overcoming the adversity week 1 and trying to just get used to your team? And then also they could make the playoffs very easily, or is that spot based on their schedule? Because it's a rather weak schedule from here on out, other than really having to go to USC and play.
It's a weak schedule. And then I don't think it's necessarily totally fair to say both teams just looked bad in that game, when really, I feel like that's just because it was a low scoring game. I was pretty impressed by Notre Dame's defense. And then I was just impressed over being able to overcome that adversity, losing their starting left tackle, playing a true freshman out there at left tackle. And they were actually leaning on that A&M front. That is a very talented front. In the 4th quarter, they really started to find success running the ball, and that was the difference in the ball game. And I just think going on the road in that type of environment, week 1, with a lot of new pieces on offense, some new pieces on defense, and being able to come out with a win, that was pretty big time for Notre Dame. They would typically falter in those, and I picked them to falter in the prediction show. I was just really impressed.
I did not. I want to go on record and say that I predicted that game perfectly.
I should know never to think A&M's going to win a big game. That's
why would you think A&M's going to win? Hey, did you see the stat at Texas A&M when they are college game day? They are like 1-9 or something ridiculous. They have a terrible
1-9
record.
now. They were 1-8 going
1-9 now.
I should have known better. I'll never pick little brother in a game again. McNeese is probably going to beat him this week. I am just out on them. They look like the same exact offense under Jimbo. It was bad. Right. But I'll round out. Yep. The rest of we're getting off the rails today, but we're excited. It's week 1 of college football. Tanner's in paradise. I'm in my basement, but hey.
Your mom's basement.
No, this is our basement. So rounding out, I guess the next 3 teams, I do have Texas. I wish I could pick them to win the conference, but I still think Georgia looks a little too good. USC, I was very impressed with their week 1, another big time week 1 winner. I was very impressed. Their defense looked much better. The offense looks great. Moss looked excellent at quarterback. This may be one of the best all around Lincoln Riley teams that he's had out of anywhere he's been. And then Tennessee, it was Chattanooga, but they look like they actually have a quarterback now. This looks like a much improved Tennessee team on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm going to go ahead and go with the 5 seed. I'm going to put Texas there as that first team out of the top 4 who's not a conference champion. I agree with you with Georgia. Until proven otherwise, I can't take Georgia out of that SEC championship spot. And then I've got Tennessee, the team you just mentioned. Very impressed with them. They look like they're ready to play this year, and their defense looks much improved. As long as they're playing complementary football and their offense isn't doing too much and their defense is having to suffer from it because they're scoring too fast and they're not taking the air out of the football a little bit, I think Tennessee is going to be a very solid team this year. And then I'm going to go Bama. Yes, that's 3 straight SEC teams, and I know I'm not an SEC cultist yet anyway. I just think that Bama was one of the best looking teams in the country yesterday. And yes, I know the competition week 1, it's hard to judge. You get a shutout and you score over 50 points, you're going to be looking like one of the best teams in college football. And then Penn State, man, I think Penn State looks solid. And I know I had to throw in a Big Ten team in there. I had to start kind of mixing up conferences. I think the ACC looks so weak after week 1. It's going to be tough to put more than 1 or 2 ACC teams in the college football playoffs. They may not have but 1 or 2 top 12 teams when it's all said and done. And there is still going to be that outlier who's not a Power 4 or Power 5 conference team who gets that automatic bid, and that takes another spot away from the ACC. Same thing with the Big 12. They didn't look as crisp as maybe I wanted them to. I think conference play is going to be exciting in the Big 12. But Penn State, man, they dominated West Virginia defensively and offensively as much of the game as I was kind of capable of watching, and didn't watch a ton of it. But just looking at the stat sheet, they were in full control the entire game.
Yeah. And I guess to round out my 4, I'll start where you left off. Penn State. One of the teams I was most impressed with week 1. I was able to watch a lot of that game. This is a completely different offense under Andy, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, Kotelnicki. He was the KU offensive coordinator last year. I love his scheme. He knows how to scheme guys open. And to kind of prove that point, Penn State had 8 plays of 40+ yards last year total in the season. They had 4 against West Virginia.
Wow. Hey, and West Virginia is not a slouch team. They're not just some cupcake. You know, I'm not saying they're a Big 12 champion, contender by any means. I don't think they're going to win their conference by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not some pushover team. They're going to win some games. They're probably going to be bowl eligible by the end of the season.
I think they can beat Michigan and Oregon. Maybe not Ohio State, but I think they can beat Michigan and Oregon, especially based off week 1.
Right. Based on week 1, I think Penn State, if this is the year that they're going to kind of overcome those humps, because Penn State's this team and everybody knows it, they're going to win 9-10 games. Those 2 losses that they're going to lose, Michigan, Ohio State, maybe you throw in a good Michigan State team from time to time. They've just been that team that whenever they're playing their best teams in their conference for that year, Penn State always comes up short in that, even maybe in Iowa or something like that. They just come up short each year, whatever those 2 teams are that they have to go through to become a conference champion or play in the conference championship game. They end up tripping at the finish line.
Yeah, and this last thing I'll say on Penn State, I don't want to talk about them more than Texas, but with Penn State, in the last, I believe it is 6 seasons, they would have made a 12-team playoff about 4 times.
Yeah.
So this expansion of the playoff is definitely very beneficial to a team like Penn State. And then rounding out my playoff, I do have Ole Miss. They're a team that it was high on preseason, and they gave me no reason not to be week one, even though it was Furman, I believe, that they played. Alabama, you mentioned it. It doesn't look like they've dropped off. Not only have they not dropped off, but on paper they haven't. If you look at the 247 talent composite rankings, they're actually the number one team in the country, which is kind of insane. And then I have Memphis rounding it out. And if you noticed, I do not have Oregon, the team that I don't believe I said it on podcast, but I texted you, was my preseason national champion.
Yeah.
I'm putting Dan Lanning in the basement until he proves otherwise. Not
He's
being
sitting
able
there
to
next to you
blow
in your
out
mom's
Idaho,
basement.
not being able to blow out Idaho at home in week one. The panic button's out. It's on the desk. The case is open. They look terrible, even though
What's
they were
funny though
dominant
is
on the
like
stat
you
sheet.
mentioned, it's funny though, you did mention that stat sheet wise, they looked good. There was nothing on the stat sheet that would suggest we didn't blow out Idaho, but they struggled. They couldn't get the ball in the end zone. They couldn't finish drives.
Yeah, and Dylan Gabriel normally will score 70 points on a team like that. I don't understand. Maybe Dan Lanning's just playing for clicks now, but I was not impressed with Oregon week one.
All right. Well, Jake, I'm going to round out my I'm going to round out my 4 and my college football predictions based on week one. I ended off I do have Oregon as one of those last 4 teams getting in. They're going to have to show a lot more than what they showed against Idaho. They are. And then I've got Liberty as that next kind of, non-power 5 team. I don't even know what to call these guys anymore. But they get the automatic bid. I think Liberty is they've got the running back quarterback duo in the conference that they're currently in. They're going to dominate, and they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. And they could push even to make an upset come the first round of the college football playoffs. K-State, I will have as a Big 12 team, and Utah to round out the 12 teams in. I think Utah only doesn't get in as a higher seed. I do have 3 Big 12 teams in. I don't think Utah gets in strictly, or they get in as one of those final teams because of a Cam Rising getting hurt for 2 or 3 games, and they drop a game or 2 in that conference. But I do think they can sneak in.
Why not have USC over one of those Big 12 teams? Do you really think
USC is going to trip
Big
up.
12 teams? But so are Big 12 teams. That's going to be a big league that I think the winner could end up having 3 losses.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think you're going to have K-State and Utah possibly being one of those teams that has 2 losses on the season, and they're going to be one of the first ones out. Arizona has a 1-loss season as Big 12 champions, and then you're going to have K-State and Utah as a 2-loss team there right at the bottom. And I'm not sure that you can make a case for an ACC team making it, and I think USC is going to trip up eventually. I think USC's schedule is a gauntlet going in the first year of the Big Ten. But yeah, I see them losing at least 3 games this season. I know they look good against LSU. I could be eating crow. Again, it's week 1. We're going to look like idiots by the time this is all said and done.
That is very true. It'll be fun to revisit these even midway through the season or at the end of the season and kind of see what they're looking like. We may both just be laughing at each other
100%.
at the end of the day.
Yeah, we're going to save these picks, and we're going to look back on them and be like, okay, when is week 6 coming up? Because we need to make these changes now. But Jake, let's go ahead. Any final thoughts on the show?
Happy with week 1 of college football. Anytime you get a Longhorn win, an Aggie loss in week 1 is a
Can't
good
get
time.
any better,
Obviously,
can it?
an Oklahoma loss.
An Oklahoma
would
loss
make it better, but that's not going to
cherry on
happen
top.
against Temple.
Yeah.
But no, it's a great week 1. Anytime you win 52-0, there's not much to complain about as a Longhorn fan, especially with some of the season openers we've been through in the last decade. It feels great to feel comfortable that we do have a team that can compete for the playoffs and maybe compete to do something special this year.
Absolutely. Well, Jake, that is going to do it for Tuesday's episode of All In Horns. Same time tomorrow, guys, and we'll be talking all things Longhorns horns every day right here on All in Horns. Hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.